Well, the economic battle between the U.S. President Barack Obama and his political opponents continues. Now, Obama is accusing the Republicans of blackmail over the government shutdown and has urged House Speaker John Boehner to stop making excuses.
My suggestion to the Speaker has been and will continue to be, let's stop the excuses. Let's take a vote in the House. Let's end this shutdown right now. Let's put people back to work.
Obama made the remarks on the 8th day of the government shutdown. He called on Republicans not to tie the reopening of the government or the debt ceiling to his health care law. The U.S. president also warned about the U.S. borrowing authority, saying that if the Hill fails to extend the government's debt ceiling, the United States will be unable to pay its bills for the first time in 225 years. Meanwhile, the looming default is overshadowing discussions on the government shutdown. The International Monetary Fund says if the U.S. government does not raise its $16.7 trillion borrowing limit by late October, the country's economy will go back into recession. In response to Obama's statement, the Speaker of the House said he is disappointed that Obama refuses to negotiate.
When it comes to the issue of funding our government, the House has passed four bills. Four bills to fund our government and provide fairness to the American people under Obamacare. Each of those four bills was rejected by the United States Senate. We can't raise the debt ceiling without doing something about what's driving us to borrow more money and to live beyond our means. The idea that we should continue to spend money that we don't have and give the bill to our kids and our grandkids would be wrong.
Well, let's cross over to Washington. Joining us via Skype is our correspondent Colin Campbell to tell us a bit more. Colin, as the countdown has started now, will the U.S. be able to pull through this one, or will we see the U.S. default for the first time in 225 years?
Well, many analysts are saying that the U.S. will come to a resolution. I think both sides, even though they differ on many different platforms, have both said that it would be inexcusable for the U.S. to default on its loans. And what Speaker Boehner was talking about is passing on some of the costs of our nation to future generations. But a lot of Democrats would take umbrage to that because they say that the debt ceiling and the debt limit is to pay for bills that have already been spent. It's to pay for services that have already been used or rendered, and that we have to just pay those in full. The president, of course, during his speech today, said the debt ceiling issue is taken care of. He'd be happy to discuss anything else. I think what's going on here, however, is a trust issue. I don't think that House Republicans and House Speaker John Boehner really trust the president, and that could be because of the fiscal cliff issue that was negotiated earlier this year, where Speaker Boehner felt that he gave up too many concessions to resolve the possible fiscal cliff crisis. And I think he's playing a little bit more hardline now with the president saying, listen, I made concessions with you earlier this year. Now it's time for you to make some concessions, Mr. President. And now you're seeing this power battle here going on between House GOP with Speaker John Boehner against the Senate Democrats and the President of the United States of America.
And Colin, very quickly, if you can, this concession that the Republicans want from Obama, is it only centered around the Affordable Health Care Act or Obamacare?
Well, a lot of it is on the Affordable Care Act, otherwise it's called Obamacare, but it's also entitlement spending. And this could come with the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP, and welfare programs. So yes, to make these drastic cuts in entitlement programs would affect a lot of minorities, a lot of immigrants in the U.S. And of course, major issue really hasn't been talked about that much in the American States. These entitlement cuts would really affect.
Of course, the big government and big business would stand to benefit from these cuts because maybe their taxes, they feel their taxes would be lowered, or they wouldn't have to pay for health care as much, so that they would be able to keep some of those profits within the business. And I think that's the key issue here, is that you're seeing the fight in the House GOP fueled by a lot of these big businesses and corporations that want to hold on to a lot of that money. They don't want to spend the extra money for the Affordable Care Act. Democrats, on the other hand, say that the expenses would already amount to something that the U.S. would not be able to handle in the long term because of the rising cost of health care. And that's where you see this ideological battle happening between the Republicans and Democrats.
Okay, our correspondent Colin Campbell there standing by in Washington. Colin, thank you for that update there.